Welcome to my YouTube channel. Hit the like button, share your thoughts, subscribe, and tap the bell icon. The coffee spill that changed everything. The coffee was still dripping down her uniform when the laughter started. "Oops, sorry, didn't see you there," Amanda said, flashing a smug grin as she tilted her designer cup back to sip what was left. The others behind her burst into chuckles, their tailored suits shaking ever so slightly, like children who'd just pulled a cruel prank. The janitor grey shirt, soaked hair tied back beneath a plain black cap stood still for a moment. Her name tag read Elise, though no one had ever bothered to call her that. To them, she was just the cleaning lady. Quiet, forgettable, invisible. She didn't respond, didn't flinch, just looked Amanda straight in the eyes with an unsettling calm. Then she lowered her gaze, gripped the mop handle tighter, and silently turned away. Everyone saw it, the spill, the mockery, the humiliation, but as usual, they all turned back to their conversations, pretending nothing happened. Amanda laughed louder, as if to stamp her superiority deeper into the marble floor Elise had just cleaned. The elevator chimed open. Elise stepped inside, wheeling her bucket behind her. She didn't press the button for the janitor's closet on the third floor like usual. Instead, she reached beneath the panel, her gloved fingers prying open a small hidden flap. From her pocket, she pulled out a rusted key, one no one had seen in over a decade. She slid it in and twisted it. The floor buttons blinked twice, then the elevator descended past the basement. As the walls vibrated slightly and the lights flickered, Elise leaned against the mirror and whispered for words only she could hear. "Now it begins." Finally, back on the 14th floor, Amanda strutted into the marketing boardroom, throwing her coat on the back of a chair. "God, I don't even know why they let her clean our floor," she complained, brushing imaginary lint from her blazer. "She always stares like she's plotting something." Josh, a junior VP with too much hair gel and too little self-awareness, smirked, plotting revenge with her mop. "Yeah, terrifying." They laughed again. None of them noticed the manila envelope sitting quietly on the corner of the conference room table. It hadn't been there a moment ago. Inside was a photo of the company's founder, Michael Arwood, smiling younger. Beside him, 3 executives. Amanda recognized them all. Then she flipped the photo over. On the back, scrawled in black ink, "You buried one of us, but some roots grow back stronger." Amanda blinked. What the hell? Meanwhile, far below, the elevator came to a soft stop. The doors opened with a sigh, revealing a dim concrete corridor that hadn't seen footsteps in years. Elise wheeled her bucket out but left it halfway down the hall. She walked differently. Now, shoulders straight, confident. She unlocked a steel door and stepped into a narrow room. On the far wall was a corkboard covered in old documents, newspaper clippings, and faded photographs. In the center, a smiling woman with auburn hair, except she hadn't been Elise then. She'd been Marianne Arwood, the real co-founder of Arwood and Rain. 10 years ago, she was married to Michael Arwood. Together, they built the company from their garage. Sleepless nights, failed pitches, endless debt, then success, too much success, and suddenly, she wasn't needed anymore. They'd accused her of embezzlement, faked documents, bribed a therapist, claimed she had a breakdown, locked her away in a private rest home while the company changed, hands cutting her out of everything. The media ran with it. Within a year, Marianne Arwood was declared legally dead, but she wasn't dead. She was watching, waiting, cleaning floors in the very building she'd once designed, listening, gathering pieces. And now, everything was ready. Amanda's phone buzzed. One new message, unknown number. "Check your email," and closed the door. Amanda frowned. She looked around. No one else noticed. She opened her inbox. Subject, "You don't know who you're mocking." Attachment, a zip folder. She hesitated, then clicked. Inside, scans of confidential documents, original founder agreements, signatures, secret accounts, emails between her boss and the board from 10 years ago, and one audio file. She played it, static, then a voice. "You took everything from me, my company, my name, my life, but I'm still here, watching, cleaning up your messes. And now I'm starting with you." Amanda's face went white. Back underground, Elise stared at the wall of names, the people who had betrayed her, the ones who knew and said nothing, and those who simply watched it happen. Every one of them was still in the building tomorrow. She would expose them all, but tonight Tonight was just a warning. She picked up an old Polaroid, her and Michael at their first office. She tore it in half, dropped his side in the trash, and pinned her half to the center of the board. Then she whispered, "I'm taking back everything." The elevator doors closed behind her, a ghost in the system. The morning after the anonymous emails arrived, the office buzzed with a strange kind of energy. Amanda sat stiffly in the boardroom, her eyes flicking toward the door every time it creaked. Her phone hadn't stopped vibrating all morning. Texts from coworkers asking if she'd seen the weird messages. Some got the email, some didn't, but the ones who did, they were silent now, watching, pretending. It was like the entire top floor had been haunted overnight, and somewhere in that silence, Elise walked unnoticed, pushing her cart, collecting trash, refilling the bathroom soap dispensers. Invisible, just like she had been for the last 7 years. Only now, every step she took felt different, heavier, more deliberate, as if every footfall echoed through the very foundation of the company. She passed Amanda's office and paused for a brief second. Inside, Amanda was pacing, talking to someone on the phone. "I don't know who sent it, okay, but someone has the originals." And they knew Michael forged her breakdown. If this goes public, Elise moved on before she could hear the rest. She didn't need to. The panic had begun. In the server room 2 floors down, David, an IT specialist who still lived with his mother, stared at the flashing red light on his screen. Someone had accessed the company's locked archives. At 2:17 A.M. Files that hadn't been touched in years, classified files, founder agreements, non-disclosure packs, medical reports. He pulled up the access log. Only one ID number appeared. It didn't match any employee record. He adjusted his glasses, heart racing. Who the hell was MA003? Meanwhile, Elise sat on a bench outside the break room, hands folded over her lap. The cleaning cart stood beside her, the smell of bleach rising faintly from it. Her eyes scanned the corridor as if counting ghosts, each person who passed her laughing nervously, whispering theories, glancing over their shoulders. Had no idea. She knew every corner of this building better than they ever would. She'd been gathering things for years. Photos, passwords, timetables, badge numbers. She knew who slipped out early for affairs, who padded invoices, who visited offshore tax sites. She never said a word until now. From her pocket, she pulled out an envelope. Inside it, a copy of a mental health report, one that had been used to institutionalize her a decade ago. Every word in it was false, signed by a psychiatrist who'd later disappeared. She slid the envelope into Amanda's mailbox slot and walked away. By lunchtime, half the top floor staff had stopped talking altogether. The CEO, Brandon Rain, Michael's former protege, called an emergency meeting in his office. The top 10 executives, all present, doors locked. Amanda sat near the window, arms crossed, face pale. "I want to know who's behind this," Brandon snapped, slamming his palm on the table. "Old documents, photos, audio files. Who has this kind of access?" "They're not just fakes," Amanda said. "Some of it is real." He turned sharply toward her. "And how would you know that?" She froze. "Because I saw that report years ago. The one about Marianne. The board used it to protect this company." Brandon interrupted. No one spoke. Across the room, one of the finance directors slowly pushed forward his tablet. "There's something else," he said, almost whispering. The server pinged at 2 a.m. Someone's been inside the restricted archive. A user ID that doesn't exist in our system anymore. Brandon's eyes narrowed. "Whose ID?" The man hesitated. "MA003. A chill passed through the room. Brandon leaned back slowly in his chair, rubbing his temples. "That's impossible," he muttered. Amanda felt her skin go cold. Marianne Arwood. Her login was deleted years ago. Brandon whispered. Amanda stood. "Then who's using it now?" No one had an answer. That evening, Elise entered the locker room just after 6 p.m. The cleaning staff had mostly gone home. She sat alone on the wooden bench and opened a small black notebook from her bag. Inside were names, dates, passwords, and a photo, a printed screenshot of Amanda's email reaction from the company's own surveillance system. She crossed Amanda's name off the list. 1 down, 12 more to go. But as she was about to close the notebook, a voice spoke from behind her. "I always wondered where you went." Elise turned slowly. Standing in the doorway was Terence, the night shift security guard. Gray kind-eyed, and the only person who'd ever spoken to her like she was human. He didn't look surprised, just sad. You knew, Elise said softly. He nodded. Suspected. Saw your photo once, years ago, in the archives, when I was still a junior guard. Why didn't you say anything? Terence shrugged. You didn't want to be found. I respected that. She studied him for a moment, then finally asked, do you think I'm crazy? He chuckled once. I think you're dangerous, but not crazy. She smiled slightly. He stepped closer. Are you really going through with this? Her eyes darkened. I already have. By midnight, the company's internal portal glitched. Every employee received a new message, no sender ID. A single line. You stole my life. I'm taking yours back. Attached was a file. A scanned signature. Marianne Arwood, the company's real founder. The message vanished from inboxes in 10 seconds, but 10 seconds was long enough for the whole company to feel the first crack. The floor beneath them had begun to shift, and they had no idea how deep the ground would fall. The woman in the mirror, Manda, hadn't slept all night. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw that name, Marianne Arwood, flashing on the black screen. Every time she reached for her phone, she expected another anonymous message. Her mind had started playing tricks. Every knock, every creak in the hallway, felt like footsteps coming to claim something she didn't want to give back. By 7 a.m., she was already at her desk, hair wet from the shower, eyeliner smudged from exhaustion. She hadn't spoken to Brandon since the emergency meeting the day before. He hadn't answered a single one of her calls. Then, as the office began to stir with the soft noise of clacking heels and fake morning greetings, a message popped up on Amanda's screen. Subject, you look tired. Attachment, a live photo. Taken 2 minutes ago. It was her, sitting at her desk, from a camera angle that didn't exist in her office. Her breath hitched. She stood abruptly, yanking open drawers, turning her keyboard upside down, flipping her monitor. Nothing, no hidden device, but someone was watching her right now. She picked up the phone and dialed the internal security line. No answer. She tried again. Still nothing. Down in the janitor's supply room on floor 2, Elise sat alone. The small maintenance tablet on her lap buzzed with a green light. Her custom system had full access to the company's camera network now. Nobody had noticed the switch, not even it. She zoomed in on Amanda's screen from the overhead camera, watching her panic. They always looked so confident when they thought no one was watching, so loud, so smug. But the moment they felt even the smallest ripple of control slipping away, they fell apart like paper in rain. A knock came from the other side of the closet door. It wasn't scheduled staff. Elise stood slowly, sliding the tablet under the cleaning cart, and opened the door. It was Melanie, the newest intern, barely 20. Nervous, sweet, and always too shy to make eye contact. Elise blinked, surprised. You're not supposed to be down here. I know, I'm sorry, Melanie said, fidgeting with the hem of her sweater. I just wanted to talk to you. To me. The girl nodded. I don't know why, but something weird is happening in this building. People are freaking out upstairs. And yesterday, I saw Amanda crying in the stairwell. She never cries. Elise kept her face calm. Why, tell me. Melanie hesitated, then took a breath. Because you see everything. You're always around. And, ... I don't think you're just a janitor. That was unexpected. Elise's gaze didn't change. What do you think I am? I don't know. But I think whatever you're doing, maybe they deserve it. Silence. Elise's fingers relaxed slightly on the handle of the cart. For the first time in 10 years. Someone said it. Maybe ... They deserved it. Elsewhere in the building, CEO Brandon Rains stood in his private office, blinds drawn. On his desk, a black folder with the initials MA stamped in gold leaf. It had been hidden away in his safe, untouched for years. He opened it. Slowly. Inside, the original company charter, the first signed documents between Michael and Marianne, photos of them shaking hands, smiling, their ambition glowing in their eyes. He ran a hand over his face. He remembered the day it happened, the day they all turned on her. She had trusted him, even called him little brother once. And now, she was back, somewhere in the building, watching everything. Suddenly, his screen lit up. A new message. Subject, you remember this day. Attachment, a photo. He opened it. It was a shot of him and Michael standing over a white hospital bed. Marianne's body was there, not moving, eyes open, dazed, sedated. She had looked right at him, and he'd said nothing. Down in the parking garage, Terence, the security guard, lit a cigarette with shaking hands. He hadn't smoked in years, but the tension in the building was choking him. He looked up at the rooftop cameras and muttered, "What the hell did they do to her?" He had half a mind to warn someone. But who? Brandon, Amanda. They were all part of it, and Terence. He was just another man who'd looked away when it mattered. Maybe he deserved the storm that was coming. By mid-afternoon, a package arrived. At reception with no sender address. Inside was a single item, a compact mirror, cracked down the middle, stained with red ink on the edges. At the bottom of the box, a note: "Objects in mirror are closer than they appear." Security checked the cameras. There was no footage of the package being delivered, just one frame that glitched for less than a second, showing a woman's reflection in the lobby mirror. But when they enhanced the image, they couldn't identify her. Half her face was covered by a janitor's cap. At exactly 4:44 p.m., every elevator in the building stopped working. Every floor's lights flickered once. Then the announcement system came alive with a static crackle. A voice spoke. .com.low. Familiar to some. You don't get to erase people just because they're inconvenient. You don't get to rewrite the story, because sometimes the part you erased is the part that remembers everything. Click. Silence. Elise stood on the rooftop now, alone, staring over the city she once thought she'd rule. Behind her, her notebook lay open on a bench. 7 names crossed out. 5 more to go. Then, and only then, would she stop cleaning. The confession room. The silence in the boardroom was thick enough to suffocate. Brandon stood near the window, arms crossed, eyes locked on the city skyline like it held the answers. Amanda sat at the long oak table, her hands trembling around a cup of untouched coffee. Around them, the company's remaining top executives sat with stone faces, staring at the printed photo Elise had leaked, the one from the hospital room 10 years ago, the moment that destroyed everything. "This doesn't prove anything," someone muttered. Amanda's voice cracked. "It proves she never lost her mind. We put her there." Brandon turned. "No, you put her there. You and Michael." Amanda snapped her head toward him. "Don't you dare. You were part of it. You signed those papers." Brandon's lips thinned, but he didn't respond, because she was right. They all were guilty. Down on floor 3, Elise entered the HR records room using a stolen key. The room smelled of dust, printer ink, and quiet secrets. File drawers lined the walls, filled with folders no one had touched in years. She moved quickly, pulling out a thick file stamped with the name Terence Marlowe, the night shift security guard. She paused. This part was harder. Terence had been kind to her, the only one. He never laughed when others mocked her. He offered coffee on cold mornings. He once helped her lift a heavy trash bin without saying a word. But kindness didn't erase silence. Terence had seen things, knew things, and he never said a word to stop it. She flipped through his file. In 2015, a memo. Security officer reported seeing Mrs. Arwood escorted through B to exit after hours. Requested to speak to HR. Request denied. Elise closed her eyes. He did try. Someone silenced him. That changed everything. Terence sat in the security office now, watching camera feeds with a heavy heart. His phone buzzed. A message. No number. "Why didn't you try harder?" He stared at the screen, breathing shallow. Then he stood and walked out, back upstairs. Melanie, the intern, hesitated in the hallway. She clutched something in her hand, an envelope. She glanced around, then knocked on Amanda's door. "Come in," Amanda called, voice frayed from the stress. Melanie stepped in, eyes darting to the floor. "I found this taped under my desk this morning." Amanda frowned. "Taped?" Melanie nodded. "With my name on it, but I think it wasn't meant for me." She held out the envelope. Amanda opened it slowly. Inside was a single piece of paper, typed neatly in the center. "One of you helped her disappear. The rest watched. One of you still talks to her." Amanda's hands trembled. She looked at Melanie. "Is this some kind of threat?" Melanie shook her head. "I think it's a warning." Amanda's stomach twisted. The paper felt heavier than it should, because deep down, she already knew who it was talking about. Someone among them was still loyal to Marianne, still helping her, still feeding her everything that night. Elise entered an office she hadn't dared set foot in 4 years. Michael's. It had remained mostly untouched since his death, preserved like a tomb. Photos of him on the shelves, awards framed on the walls, his leather chair still spotless. She sat down in it. For a moment, she didn't feel like the janitor. She didn't feel like Elise, or a ghost. She felt like herself again, like Marianne Arwood, the woman who'd built this company from nothing, who had drafted the first business pitch on that very desk, who had believed love and business could coexist, until love betrayed her. She reached under the desk and pulled open the hidden drawer. She'd designed it herself. Inside, a flash drive, exactly where she'd left it a decade ago. She plugged it into the laptop. Old video files blinked to life. Recordings from planning meetings, audio files from private conversations, legal memos with hand-signed authorizations. Evidence. And buried in one folder labeled Confidential M. She found it, a video file, titled The Agreement. She clicked play. The screen lit up with a grainy video. Michael, Brandon, Amanda, and a man in a lab coat sat around a table. Michael's voice spoke first. If we want her out permanently, the breakdown has to be convincing. Drug dosage, signed statement, the whole thing. The doctor nodded. It's risky, but if no one speaks up, it'll hold. Elise felt her chest burn. She remembered the day she woke up strapped to a hospital bed. The world blurry, her voice too weak to scream, and now, here it was, recorded, planned, proof, but before she could breathe, the door behind her clicked. She turned sharply. Terence stood there, holding a keycard. He looked at her, not startled, just sad. I knew you'd come here, he said softly. Elise's jaw tensed. You kept this key. I kept a lot of things, he said. I saw the video once, tried to speak to HR. They shut me out. You should have tried harder. I did, he whispered, but I didn't try enough, and I'm sorry. Elise stared at him, unsure what to say. Then, finally, she nodded. You were the only one who saw me as human, she said. Terence stepped forward. What will you do with all this? She looked down at the flash drive. Expose it, even if it takes the whole company down. She looked him in the eye. They already did that the day they erased me. Just then, across the building, Amanda received a text from a blocked number. Meet me in conference room C. Come alone. I know who's helping her. Amanda froze. Her heart pounded. She grabbed her phone and left her office, heels echoing through the empty corridor. When she opened the door to the conference room, it was dark. Only one person stood inside. Melanie, and she wasn't crying anymore. She was smiling. The intern's true-faced Manda stared across the dimly lit conference room, her breath catching in her throat. Melanie, the intern, with trembling hands, quiet footsteps, and wide, nervous eyes. But tonight, she wasn't nervous. She wasn't small. She looked like someone who had already won. Amanda took a step forward. What is this? Melanie didn't move. You came alone. Good. Her voice was different, now calm, deliberate. The kind of voice that didn't need to yell to be heard. Amanda's mouth felt dry. You sent the message. Melanie nodded, and a dozen others. Amanda blinked, trying to make sense of it. You've been helping her from the beginning. Amanda felt the floor tilt slightly beneath her. You're just ... an intern. Melanie raised an eyebrow. No one ever looks past the badge, do they? She reached into her bag and pulled out a slim folder, tossing it onto the table between them. Go ahead, look. Amanda opened it with shaking hands. Inside were newspaper clippings, photos, and 2 official birth certificates. Marianne Arwood, Melanie Arwood. Amanda's heart stopped. You're her daughter, Melanie finished. Born in secret, raised in silence. She didn't want me involved. But after what they did to her, I had to be. Amanda backed away, her voice nearly a whisper. You've been watching us all. Studying, recording, learning how you treat people you think are beneath you. Amanda slammed her hand on the table. You're playing a dangerous game. Melanie stepped closer. No, Amanda. I changed the game. In his office, Brandon paced furiously. He hadn't slept, hadn't eaten. Emails were flooding in from mid-level employees who had received pieces of the leaked files. A quiet civil war was spreading through the company, some defending the founders, others demanding resignations. Rumors of a whistleblower were all over the intranet. Then his phone buzzed again. Unknown number. Message. You have 24 hours to step down, or the world sees what you buried. Attached was a video still, his signature, on the psychiatric committal order for Marianne Arwood. His phone slipped from his hand and crashed against the hardwood floor. This couldn't be happening. Meanwhile, on floor 10, Terence stood beside Elise in the shadows of the employee archive room. The flash drive was in her coat pocket. "They won't go quietly," Terence said. "You know that. They won't have a choice." "What about the people who didn't know? The new hires? The ones who weren't there?" Elise paused, her expression tightening. "I'm not here to ruin lives," she said. "Just expose the ones who ruin mine." Terence sighed. And after that, Elise looked out through the glass window at the hallway where people once laughed at her, spilled drinks on her, acted like she didn't exist. After that, I disappear. Terence frowned. "You sure?" She looked him in the eyes. "I don't want to be here after this place sees the truth. I just want them to know I was never crazy. I was never gone. I was just forgotten." He nodded, slowly. "I'll help you finish it." At 3:33 p.m. the next day, a black SUV pulled into the underground garage. Out stepped a woman in a sharp navy suit, flanked by 2 assistants. Her badge read, Sandra YU Federal Corporate Crime Unit. He was there because someone had sent her a full folder of evidence, whistleblower-level exposure, stamped and authenticated. She was there because someone had reopened Marianne Arwood's case with proof she'd been falsely institutionalized for financial gain. She was there because the company was about to burn. Upstairs, bowed, Amanda sat frozen in her office as security announced a federal investigation has entered the building. Melanie's words from last night echoed in her head. "We're not here to destroy your company. We're here to give it back to the person who actually built it." Amanda gripped her desk. Because now she wasn't afraid of Marianne. She was afraid of the truth, and what it would look like if it went viral. In the center of the building, the largest conference room was cleared and filled with chairs. On a giant screen at the front, a logo appeared. Arwood Industries. The forgotten files, a digital folder, blinked open. Hundreds of employees, summoned without explanation, sat in tense silence. Terence stood near the back, eyes locked on the door, and then Elise walked in a janitor's uniform, not in hiding, but in a dark blazer, chin high, shoulders square, hair uncovered. Whispers exploded around the room. "Is that? Oh my God, Marianne." Elise stepped to the center, turned, and looked at the sea of faces who had never seen her, really seen her. 10 years ago, she began, her voice clear and unshaken. "This company erased me. I was drugged, declared insane, cut out of the business I co-founded. My husband, Michael Arwood, staged the entire thing. With help, she let that land. Today, the world will see the truth, and each of you can decide what side of history you want to be on." She turned toward the screen. "Play it." The first video loaded. Michael's voice, Amanda's signature, Brandon's face. A quiet gasp passed through the crowd. One man stood and walked out, shaking his head, tears in his eyes. Amanda sat frozen in her office, watching the stream on her screen. A new message popped up, from Marianne Arwood. Subject: "I hope you never look at a janitor the same way again." Amanda stared at it, then deleted it, but her hands were shaking. Back in the conference room, Elise sat down beside Melanie as the next video played. People were talking now, whispers turning into shock, shame, support. Elise closed her eyes. For a moment, not for peace, but because she finally felt something she hadn't in years. Heard that final cleanse. The footage ended. No dramatic music, no special effects, just the raw, silent weight of the truth. Inside the main conference room, the audience sat motionless. Some executives had their heads in their hands. Others just stared straight ahead, as if seeing their lives fall apart in slow motion. Marianne, once known as Elise the janitor, stood from her seat. Her presence, now undeniable, seemed larger than the walls that once kept her hidden. She didn't need applause. She didn't want pity. She wanted closure, and it was finally here. 30 minutes later, federal agents entered the building. Nobody stopped them. They moved swiftly and quietly, like surgeons in a dying hospital. They had warrants, names, evidence, everything they needed. One by one, they called in the executives who had signed the false reports, authorized the silencing, or helped cover up what was done to Marianne. Brandon Rain, the CEO, was calm. As they escorted him from his office, his tie was still straight, but his eyes were empty. When he passed Marianne in the lobby, he paused. Their eyes locked for a moment. He opened his mouth to say something, maybe an apology, maybe a defense, but she shook her head. "No more lies," she said softly. He looked away, and just like that, the man who helped erase her existence was led out in handcuffs. Amanda wasn't so composed. She had tried to sneak out through the back parking elevator, but the agents caught her just in time. When they read the charges aloud, she protested, shouted, even cried, but the cameras had captured everything. Her voice was on the recordings. Her signature was on the reports. "I was pressured," she yelled as they walked her through the lobby. No one replied. No one even looked at her. The same way she once ignored the woman mopping the floors. By early evening, the office was quiet. Most employees had gone home. HR had sent an official memo telling staff they were free to leave. The company was under transition. That was putting it mildly. In a private office on the top floor, the one that used to be Michael's, Marianne sat alone for a moment, looking out over the city she once dreamed of building something honest in. Melanie entered quietly, holding 2 mugs of tea. "You okay?" she asked. Marianne nodded, eyes fixed on the skyline. "Tired, but whole." She took the mug and held it close. "This place used to mean everything to me," Marianne said. "I thought if I built something with love, it couldn't be taken from me." Melanie sat beside her. "They tried, but you're still here." "I don't even want it anymore," Marianne said, smiling faintly. "Not the title, not the desk. I just wanted the truth to breathe." Melanie leaned her head on her mother's shoulder. It did. 3 weeks later, the news had spread like wildfire. Articles titled, "CEO Busted in Founders Cover-Up Scandal," and "Janitor Turns Out to Be Tech Company's True Visionary" flooded news outlets. Marianne's story hit social media like a storm, and for once, people didn't just scroll past. People wanted to hear her speak. People wanted to know what she'd do next. But Marianne didn't return to the office. Instead, she disappeared on her own terms this time. 6 months later, in a quiet coastal town far from the city, Marianne stood in a small local community center. She wasn't in a blazer. She wasn't carrying court documents. She was wearing simple jeans and holding a marker in front of a whiteboard where the words "starting over, helping survivors of workplace trauma" were written. Around her sat a group of women and men, some young, some older, all scarred in different ways. "I don't want to talk about revenge today," Marianne said, smiling gently. "Let's talk about rebuilding." Someone raised a hand. "But what if the world still sees you as the victim?" Marianne thought for a moment, then said, "Then you show them who you really are, quietly, powerfully, not to prove them wrong, but to prove yourself right." Back in the city, the building that once bore the name Arwood and Rain had changed. The large plaque on the outside now simply read, "The Arwood Foundation, founded by truth." The new board of directors consisted of previously overlooked employees, a receptionist, a former HR assistant, and yes, Terence, the security guard who finally stood up. Melanie sat on that board too, and every time someone asked her how this all started, she pointed to a photo on the wall. It showed her mother, in a janitor's uniform, smiling slightly, standing tall. Final note, from Marianne's voice narration style. "I used to think survival meant staying invisible. I let them turn me into a ghost in my own story. But ghosts remember, ghosts observe, and sometimes they come back to finish what they started. Not for revenge, but for truth. And to remind the world, you never know who you're mocking." The end.